Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Mark Warren on the line, and he is co-founder of Two Bears Wine. Mark, welcome to the show.
How are we doing today? So excited to be here.
All right, Mark. So, as for our longtime listeners, they know that my favorite episodes are when I get to announce that we have a new member of our community and also a new book author on the line. So, first off, I just want to say welcome to the book project, and we're happy to have you part of our community.
Oh, thank you very much, and I'm very excited because this is my first run at actually being part of a book. So, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And you have quite a story to tell. We'll talk about how you got started in hospitality business, specifically in wine, and a little bit of your journey and where you're at now with Two Bears Wine. But before we do all that, we'll get started and start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Mark, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Mark, what mission matters to you?
Really, it's being able to bring, my journey as an entrepreneur to life for others, because every journey is different. I have friends that are serial entrepreneurs, and they can tell you dozens of companies, each time it's done different. So, the learnings that I've been able to bring forth with my business partner, being able to share that, I think is just powerful, because, not too many places in the world where you can do what you can do in the United States and be an entrepreneur. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Big fan of entrepreneurs in the U.S., which is why I interview them all the time. So let's just to get us kicked off here. First off, how did you get started in hospitality, and specifically, how did you get interested in wine?
I grew up in a family that made homemade wine. I've always been interested in wine. And, to me, wine has always been one of those things that you can share with anybody. I mean, it's been part of love, war, peace. You can't always get somebody to sit down and have a glass of tequila with you. So, it's always been kind of a passionate thing. And I feel like, what you can bring together in stories with wine. And so as my business partner and I, Tom, we were getting older and, drinking a little less, but also paying attention to what we were drinking more wine, because things like beer and other things just weren't digesting with me. And we looked at kind of where we were in our lives as we were both getting over 40 and trying to stay somewhat healthy as previous athletes, and said, is there a way to incorporate wine into our lifestyles? And does anybody else want to kind of do the same thing? That it's kind of that balance, life balance, work balance, health balance, so that it's not all on or all off.
How did you come up with maybe this concept of incorporating, like when I think of lifestyle, I think of, athletes, think of the gym, I think of a lot of different niches, but specifically wine and how to incorporate that. How did that idea come about?
Yeah, about 12 years ago, I had jumped into CrossFit. People like to call it a cult or whatever it was. It was kind of my second stage of it as an athlete. Previously, I was a martial artist for years. And as I got really into it and was doing some, local and regional competitions, I dragged Tom into it. As you started going to some of these competitions, or you go to like a mud run, my wife was doing Ironmans, a lot of times there'd be parties afterwards. There'd always be beer. Sometimes there'd be spirits. But we looked at it as like, why was wine not part of this as well? And as you looked at traditional sports, you wouldn't walk into a baseball stadium and see a wine sign. It would always be beer. So, kind of our aha moment was, there's all these fanatical athletes, whether they're runners, yogis, CrossFitters, cyclists, that still wanted to have balance and enjoy a cocktail. But why wasn't there something that was wine-based that was, a better option? Because a lot of the stuff we were looking into, unfortunately, wasn't great. So that was our mindset. If we could bring a, high quality, great tasting wine that had some additional benefits to it, would people want that? Because that's what we were looking for.
So I like wine, but I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know much about it. I like when I taste something I just like it. Making wine approachable, just for the industry and just for the person that just enjoys it. Like, maybe I don't know where the grape's from. Maybe I don't know how to pronounce everything. Okay, whatever. But I like wine. What does it mean to maybe make wine approachable in today's market?
And that's always been the challenge is, wine is kind of has this mysticism about it. Over 95% of the people who purchase wine do it based on price, recommendation, and if not, a label. and you can walk into some of these retailers that have 8,000 bottles and can be overwhelming. And like you said, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to feel dumb because I can't pronounce Sauvignon Blanc, or especially you get into the European wines and they have a lot more challenging phrases to them. It is still that same difficult approach that has been for decades of being something that people are going to enjoy but feel confident in their buying. So that was kind of our secondary thought, as far as, first it was high quality, great tasting, but then could we make it approachable and fun? Could it be something that you felt confident buying, but you didn't have to feel like, oh, I have to go take a master's class in tastings to understand what this is. And Tom would always say, he's like, I'm red light, green light. Pour it in a glass, I'll tell you if I like it or I don't. And we're the same way. We don't speak the wine jargon. We didn't go become sommeliers. We just knew how to make great tasting wines that fit our palate, and we thought there'd be others out there that liked it as well.
Okay, so you had this idea, you knew you wanted to make wine approachable, and then you also knew that there was a market for wine within what you were doing in the CrossFit community, and just in general, the very active, I would say, athlete community. How did the business part of this come about? What was that turning point or tipping point, or was it a buildup? At what point was it we should make a business out of this?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't quite sure where the direction was going to go. I mean, we started this in 2015. We had a good friend of ours that we knew. Tom had known him for a long time, and I got introduced to him. He was a winemaker out in California. So we brought the idea to him. We drank a lot of bad wine for months at a time, trying to conceptualize what we were trying to do. A big component about California wines, the U.S. government allows 76 different flavor additives. So unfortunately, much like food, there can be things that are overproduced. So we said, we don't want to use any of that. We just want to make wine, make it as super low sugar as possible, great tasting, but keep all the alcohol. At the end of the day, if you're going to crack open a bottle of wine, cutting the alcohol is going to affect the taste. It's not going to be really good. So that was that challenge. Once we landed on the wine and how good it was, now was how are we going to go to market? So it was very, very guerrilla marketing. I mean, it was 5, 6, 7 nights a week. Tom and I would go in 2 different directions, and it was wine on our shoulders. We'd pour in yoga studios. We'd go to mud runs. We were in CrossFit gyms.
Wow.
Almost every Lululemon in the Northeast would say, hey, Sunday nights, we're having 50 people in for a VIP fitting. You guys want to come pour wine? We get approved by the mall. So a lot of unique places that we poured wine. And then we had in the very beginning, a horrible WordPress website. And we'd have a card swipe and let people try and order from us and get it shipped a week later. But that was the start.
Man, and in those early days, and I asked this question because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I watch this at varying stages, but I like to stick in the early stages a little longer because that's the part that people don't normally hear about. They hear about the end, right? Oh, we sold it, or we made all this money, or this is the greatness that happened. But I like to stay in the early stages. So how did you determine, as you're doing all of these pourings, right? These tastings, how did you determine the scalability and how the market would actually grasp the product? You knew you had a winner.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that first year of 2015, it was just really absorbing the feedback from the consumers as we were pouring. As technology was evolving as well, we knew we had to make some changes on our website. I mean, that same time, at the end of 2015, Google had came out and said any websites that were not mobile e-commerce friendly, they were going to drop from search. So it was almost like the .com boom where people were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to quickly build new websites. We landed on Shopify. We went from a 6-minute checkout to a 30-second checkout. It was clean. It was easy. So layering that onto the analytics we were learning from social media, because it's all we were doing for advertising was Instagram and Facebook. So we were really, I was spending 17, 18 hours a day looking at analytics. I mean, my tech guy was in California. I was on the East Coast. He'd be up, his time was only 10 o'clock. I'd be up to 1 o'clock in the morning and adjusting audiences. And this was, again, pre changes that Apple forced Facebook to make, where you could really track people. So we were able to look at audiences very fast and make adjustments to it. So those learnings, as they started really, when you're small, when you go 5X, 10X, 15X, it's only at this much level. But when you can see those multiplications, you're like, all right, we're on track. So probably by the end of 2015, we saw there was really good traction there. So that's when we started investing in the change in the technology, rebuilt the website, gave it a little fresher look on the label, and things just really started taking off from there.
I think it's a great story and just one of those that, there's different routes to build businesses. Not saying that one path is any better than another, but I will say that for me, the individuals that kind of get their hands dirty, that they're out there, they're listening to the customer. Like you hear stories about, founder of Starbucks, right? Going out there at one point and going into the coffee shops and hearing like feedback from the customers, and you're thinking, wow, this was after the company was already big, and you're thinking like, wow, if he can do it, like what does that tell all of us other business owners that are maybe at the helm of companies that aren't as big as Starbucks, right?
I would say, one of the things we learned is, Tom is an avid reader. I can't tell you the thousands of books he's probably read. He forces me to do better. But following the customer service that was done by Zappos, and they said that that's what made that company so valuable, was that everybody in that company, or you take a brand like the Ritz, where everybody has the ability to fix something on the spot. It's not I have a problem here, let me go find my manager. They're empowered right away to take care of the customer and make things right. And Zappos had the best customer service ever. So you mentioned Starbucks doing that and going in. Well, even till the day of the sale, I did all the customer service. So all the phone calls, all the emails, even texts, when people found my cell phone, came through me. So that was, and Tom would laugh at me. He was like, when are you going to give this up? I'm like, when can you find somebody we trust to give it up? So that connection we had to our customers was valuable, because, they knew there was a live person. If there were issues, we took our learnings from running a services company in tech into our customer service here. We would say, and we would do these national rollouts, there were always going to be mistakes. We're all human, or machines break. It's a matter of, do you have a bump in the road or catastrophe? So when a customer is trying to get their wine shipped to their house, or just someone for a birthday or for a wedding, can you fix it, or do you let it miss and they're suddenly a lost customer? So we tried to keep that tight and make sure that we delivered the best customer service possible. And that kept us close to our consumers as the brand grew, so we could get their feedback and make sure we were making the right choices for the company.
And so now you're on, and as you mentioned, so that first wine brand is now you've exited, and now you're on to the next. So Two Bears Wine, I do want to spend some time on this. First, where'd the name come from?
Some of that I can't give up yet, but the premise behind why is kind of, we each have two bears in all of us.
I knew you were going to hold out on me, by the way, but it's okay. I'm going to, on the behalf of my audience, I'm going to pry a little.
Well, look how you dress today. You're in your suit, you're professional, you're ready to go. And as we were talking to Jai, you're like, oh, Jai looks comfortable and he looks ready to go surfing. Well, that's kind of the two bears of us. So you, Jai, after work. So, we look at it as wine has always been too stuffy. And that approachability, or, you want to call it sophistication, still scares people. So can we bring fun and our own fun personality that comes out after 5 o'clock or whatever it is into the wine category? So that's more of the approach this time, is staying on top of creating fantastic wines that deliver on taste and over deliver on quality, but then bringing, never mind the approachability, fun. Like you look at beer companies and spirits companies and now seltzer companies, and everything they do is about fun and the lifestyle. You don't see that correlation with wine. Wine has kind of been drifting behind the entire, alcohol category for decades. And as the wine drinker is becoming younger, it used to be the number one wine consumer was boomers. Well, they've kind of aged out. And now it's the Gen Z and millennials. Well, they have a much different approach to life than how things were being advertised or driven for sales for the last couple of decades. So that's really our pivot point, is bringing, fun and lifestyle and excitement into a category for the up and coming new drinkers.
So I know I think about this sometimes, and I fantasize about this. I'm thinking, so, okay, I have a media company, we built from the ground up, myself and the other co-founder, Chirag. And I think about, wow, if I could do it over again, or if I could start over again, what would I do? And I kind of play around with that scenario pretty often. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done this, or, oh, I would have done this. So little hindsight there. What, now that you're, launching your second or another wine brand, are there any lessons that you learned from the first time around where you're like, oh, I think I'll do that one differently this time?
Yeah, a few. Structure is, I'd say, one of the most important things. It's hard when you're, building businesses and you have rapid growth. I mean, we hit a point where we were a complete hockey stick. And at one point we were the fastest growing wine brand in the United States for 3 years running. We did it bootstrapped. I mean, Tom and I didn't take a salary for 3.5 years. We raised some friends and family money and stuff like that. But when it came time to outpacing growth, or I would say outpacing accounts receivable, and we had to raise real money, that's when, having, a mentor and some guidance. And, obviously we learned some lessons along that way, because that's when things can hurt, do you give up control? Who's, on your board, and, are you aligned? I mean, it's, partnerships are like a marriage. And if you bring in financial partners that don't have the same line of sight of you, that, hey, we want to hold on for X amount of years, and they're like, no, we want out in 18 months, it can be dangerous and it can affect the business. So I would say that's probably the number one learning, is just, making sure that if we're going to take on a partner, that we have the same line of sight. So even if that meant taking a half a step back and allowing growth to slow down a little, so we didn't just jump right in, I would say number one. Number two, inside the alcohol industry, if people don't know that are watching, alcohol is sold through a 3-tier system. So there's a lot of structure inside the alcohol world. Even though our customers are people like Whole Foods, Publix, Kroger, you don't directly sell to them. So by state laws or federal laws, we sell to a state distributor. Many states have, again, layered in another piece to that called the franchise law, which was set in place way back in the day by Henry Ford. You can't call up Ford and buy a vehicle straight from them. You have to buy it. So they become your middleman. And if they're not doing their job, in certain states, you can't even fire them. So we were building Fitvine. We were growing so fast, we were just taking whatever distributor we could. Some were just small mom and pop shops that, we thanked them for it because they helped us out and got the brand going. But as we get to a certain level, then you'd call up a Kroger and they'd say, well, give us your distribution. And you're like, oh, we don't work with 20 of these guys. So then it was the challenge of, reducing the number of distributors and finding the blue chip teams that could handle, all the major players. With that came some pain, because some of those distributors, we had to buy our way out because of these laws, or they didn't want to leave. So it created static, and sometimes, would cause friction inside the channel as you're trying to swap distributors. So a lot of learnings there that, we can take coming forward here now, and we've made the right relationship. So as we launch the next brand, we have the right partners that have the same line of sight with us and incentivized to grow the brand with us.
Man, that's exciting. And I know as you're going to do this next rollout, what can you tell us about the strategy? I know there's a lot you can't tell us, but what can you share about the strategy now?
Strategy wise, the biggest thing, like any brand, I mean, look at the number one consumer product in the world, Apple. I mean, you still see them advertised everywhere. You can never back off advertising when it comes to products. The second you slow down, somebody else slides in behind you. And part of our approach is recognizing who that consumer is. So the advertising that was done to the boomers for the past few decades doesn't work for the up and coming drinker. So that's really a major shift, is how to go to market to the millennials and the Gen Zs and speak to where they're paying attention. They're doing more podcasts or YouTube and streaming and stuff like that. So it's a different area how to gain their attention and deliver your story, because drinkers today are more honed into their brands, or I would just say consumers overall, whether it's food, alcohol, clothing. They want to know, is the brand a good company? What do they stand for? Do they give back to something? So really, it's a twofold of delivering your message as a company, but also delivering your message of the ethos of your company. So how that gets done. And a lot of times, today's technology, it's so fast, whether it's Snapchat or TikTok or all these, platforms, it's hard to convey that message in a short period of time. So, our go-to-market strategy will be a lot digital, but a lot around not the traditional Facebook, Instagram ads that we used to do.
So it's almost like it's matured this time around. It sounds like not only yourselves as business owners, particularly within this niche, but the concepts, the way you're viewed in the industry and otherwise. So, I mean, this is all exciting to me, because it's to see this next one, and I can't wait to see this on shelves and to drink it and to be a part of this, really getting it out there to the community. So I'm really excited to see this next one.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited.
So, first off, it's been great having you on the show today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the book for everybody watching. We will be bringing Mark back onto the show for a second part and a second interview when the book is actually live. But this is just a little bit of teaser. Mark, what's some of the ideas that you plan to propose in the upcoming book? Again, not holding you to this because I know we're in editing, we're still in developing, but let's just tease the audience a little bit. What kind of things do you hope to present?
I would say definitely more along our journey, as an entrepreneurs, and what we learned, and it's not so much always learning of the business; it's more learning of structure inside your teams. How do those teams then correlate to the brand? So for us, being a young company, and especially in an industry like wine, 74% of the wine sold in the United States is sold by 3 companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're stepping into a ring with Mike Tyson, and we're 5 years old. So, that's a challenge. So really, in building out our team, you have to find people, not only the experience, but that they have to have the same excitement as we did. And I mean, we had an amazing team that we had built out that I would say would run through a wall for the brand. And so
Wow.
learnings that we had in growing our company and trying to recruit people that were, had a sense of ownership of the brand, I would say it was one of the most rewarding pieces. And then how that translated to our consumers. I mean, we would get phone calls, emails, time and time again. I mean, dozens a week of people saying how our brand changed their life. And to me, I didn't really, appreciate that at first, and it kind of didn't sink in. But when people say, it's not about drinking wine, it was about balance. And so it's not about, we're not promoting, alcohol and over drinking or things like that, but it's more or less, everybody's lives a lot of times get crazy. They have families or work schedule, whatever it is. And sometimes it's hard to take a pause and be able to appreciate what's going on. So if people say, hey, I was able to enjoy your wine that I couldn't before because I would get headaches or other issues, and it's Tuesday night, 8:00, and I have a glass of wine, I can get up at 5 a.m. and hit rewind. Well, that's a positive for me. And if that's impacting me to have, a better lifestyle because I'm not as stressed, that was amazing. So trying to, how that journey evolved and watching the brand grow around that was pretty fantastic. So I think, sharing some of that and how we learned along the way, because you can't just sit down and pencil that out and say, this is how I'm going to do this. So a lot of learnings from that we hope to take into the next brand.
I'm going to cut you off there because we're not giving the whole story away. Why? Because I do sell books, right? We sell books. We're a publisher. So we're not giving the audience everything today, but don't worry. As I mentioned to everyone, we will be bringing Mark back on the show, and we'll do a part 2 to this interview where we will dive into the book when it's actually live. But for today, Mark, if somebody is listening to this and they want to follow the journey of your new brand, Two Bears Wine, what's the best way for them to do that?
twobearswine.com will be live within the coming weeks. Right now, the best would probably be following me on LinkedIn. It's just at Mark R. Warren for LinkedIn. That will be the latest updates as the brand is coming to launch. And once the brand is launched, it'll be the number 2, not TWO. So the number 2 bearswine.com.
And we'll put that the link and all the other good stuff in the show notes. And just for everybody that's listening to this, for going forward, we're recording this in March now of 2023. So by the time you hear this, I'm sure the website will very likely be live. So definitely go check it out. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or listening to an episode or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, really what gets them fired up, what gets them motivated to go out into the marketplace and to do something. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up for you, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Mark, really, it's been a pleasure. Until the next time we get to work together, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.